So let me, okay, this meeting is being recorded. Let me jump to this presentation about periodically varying systems. And so you'll see why beyond the tip of the parametric instability tongues. And here is the picture of a man that I like, and I lose his and I'm using his theory a lot. It's Achille Marie Gaston Floquet. And you'll heard about him in the talk through Floquet theory, Floquet exponent, etc., etc. So let me situate the context. With I want to talk a little bit about classical. Oh, I don't see my screen completely. Problem. So with classical wave mechanics, okay?
Oui, bonjour, ici Laurence Baudelot. J'ai vu que vous m'avez appelé, j'étais en manip.
J'entends Laurence qui parle.
Oui, on entend Laurence.
Ouais.
Okay, so classical linear wave equations. So I suppose normally everyone knows that that equation is called the D'Alembert equation, and the same name as our institute. So it's a partial differential equation because we consider only linear perturbation. And let's look at waves inside an elastic string. Okay, the perturbation we are looking at is y, the vertical position, as a function of x, the spatial position, and t. If you write down the equation of motion for that perturbation, you find D'Alembert equation where c is the speed of wave, t is the tension, O is the Linnik mass. Okay. If you consider only standing waves, you can separate variables. That's an important concept. You separate space and time, and you get two equations. Okay. You replace that in the equation of motion, you get a BVP boundary value problem in space, a second order differential equation this time, ordinary differential equation, plus boundary condition. What you get is like a discrete set of spatial modes with amplitude, and gamma n is the wave number. In time, what you get is an initial value problem. That is here a second order problem where omega is the natural pulsation. You get initial condition and you get the solution that is the harmonic vibration. And the way you represent things is a mode, yn. You can separate the y is a linear combination of all the modes, and you have a dispersion relation between omega n and gamma n. Okay, those are four modes, and in time it's just a simple harmonic oscillator. That's the basic, something we teach in a first year master student. So now, if we take something a little bit more complicated, you take the same string, but you periodically pull with a certain tension, and T is periodic with a period capital T. So you can still write, let's say, the same kind of D'Alembert's equation, but now your parameter C, the speed C, is periodic. Okay, it's not only C square. What people usually do, it's a small periodic modulation with amplitude epsilon. And let's consider harmonic modulation where omega is the frequency excitation. Okay, omega is the fundamental frequency, 2 pi over t. What you do to solve this kind of problem in this case, we still consider standing waves. Okay, you can still separate variables. In fact, in space, nothing is really changing. People are writing the solution in space as let's say a harmonic solution in space with a fundamental wave number, and you get discrete spatial modes. But what is changing is in time. Okay, in time, the modes like your oscillators are phi n t, and when you replace this solution in the D'Alembert equation, in time what you get now is not a simple harmonic oscillator, but it's what we call here it's called, for example, a Mathieu equation, and it's a Floquet oscillator. It's a second order differential equation, ordinary differential equation, with a periodic coefficient that here is cosine 2 theta that depends on fundamental frequency and t. You can still easily solve this with initial conditions, or you can use Floquet theory. Floquet theory is Floquet in his thesis said that you can express the solution of this ordinary differential equation as amplitude, or here a function that is periodic with the same periodicity, for example here as the tension, times a harmonic function where Sn is called the Floquet exponent. What you do then, the difference with classic problem is that this equation or this solution phi n is not stable for any an and qn. Okay, an, the parameter here, an depends on the wave number that you find within the space problem, the fundamental frequency omega, and the parameter of the system. Qn depends on the amplitude of modulation. And what you do with Floquet theory, it's not so difficult to do. You can compute the Floquet exponent as a function of those two parameters. And you find some regions called here the Mathieu tongues, where the real part of the Floquet exponent is superior to 0. It means that this solution, in fact, is harmonically diverging in time, and that your string is, for those parameters, is not stable, and it destabilizes. And then you need nonlinear theory to see to what limit cycle it goes. That's the difference with, we call that a time periodic system. Okay. Based on this theory, you have many examples. One that is famous. I have a lag in the video. I don't see if you see it. One that is famous is called the parametric pendulum. It's described by Mathieu equation directly. This is the Buttafuoco of Santiago de Compostela. The idea is that when you periodically vary the length of this pendulum, but the trivial solution, vertical solution, is no longer stable. If you do that in synchrony and in synchrony with the natural frequency, and your solution suddenly is diverging in time. Another field where you have lots of time periodic system is when you deal with the stability or the vibration of rotating machinery. That's where I've done my thesis, at LMS with Nguyen Quoc Son. It was on those kind of subjects. It was in 2008. I think Costas was around at that time also. In fluid, a famous instability based on this Floquet theory or this Floquet system, it's the Faraday instability. You put a liquid bath on a shaker, vertical shaker. Here, what you modulate is here you have gravito-capillary waves that can appear, and because you modulate the gravity by changing with the shaker, you modulate the acceleration, you modulate the gravity, and you can have parametric instability that appear. You do exactly the same theoretical method as I showed you before to know exactly when it becomes unstable, and experimentally you can get Faraday waves. Another field where it's really used parametric instabilities, and I've worked it on that during my postdoc, it's on microelectromechanical system in nonlinear vibration. Those little systems, they are actuated with a piezoelectric excitation frequency. Piezoelectric, they have two effects. They have a classical excitation forces. So it makes that at certain excitation frequency, you get a nonlinear limit cycle that appears with saddle node bifurcation and things like that. But you can also get, because of the modulation of the membrane forces, you can get parametric instabilities. That's something that appears here. It's the first parametric instability region. And you get a limit cycle, a nonlinear vibration that appears on those systems. It turns out that when you want to do the stability, the orbital stability of a limit cycle in dynamical system theory, you go back to Floquet theory also, because it's exactly the same equations. So that was for a little introduction for time periodic systems. But Floquet theory, if we go back to our example of the elastic string and our D'Alembert equation, there is another example of periodicity that can be in space. Okay, so imagine now a wave that is traveling, a harmonic wave, but that is seeing something that is periodic in space. For example, I don't know, the strings change linear mass periodically. You see here, red, the linear mass is different periodically. And the important parameter here is lambda, the wavelength of that periodicity. Well, you still have something like the equation of motion can still be a D'Alembert equation, but now those parameters, the parameter of the system, the wave sees something that is periodic with space. Let's say here that j of x is a periodic function as a function of space. How you solve such systems? It's 1D, and so you can still here separate variables. In time, you assume that the wave is oscillating with a fundamental frequency omega, and you are looking for what is psi de x, the spatial part. When you replace this inside the D'Alembert equation, you can still, if you arrange yourself just for the situation here, you can still find here what's something called a Mathieu equation. So it's a ordinary differential equation in space. Here zeta depends on x, the space variable. So it's an ordinary differential equation with a periodic coefficient. But because you're in space and because this is the space part with boundary condition and you're not in time, the way you interpret it is a bit different. So Floquet theory still tells you that the solution of this equation is a harmonic function, so here a periodic function, sorry, that has the same periodicity as the periodicity of your media, times a harmonic function where S is the Floquet exponent. But in Floquet, now it's between Floquet block theory, it's called S is called the block wave number sometimes. But in Floquet theory, it's called the Floquet exponent. It's a complex number. I gamma is the wave number, and mu is the real part. So you can still plot the evolution of this Floquet exponent as a function of A and Q, the parameters. Here, I and Q, they would depend of lambda, the periodicity of the media, of the frequency that you consider, omega, and the parameters of the periodic function. Okay, and you still find here, it's the Mathieu-Tongs because it's the same equation. But now the way you interpret it is that you imagine the wave can have different frequencies, and you look at what happens at the Floquet exponent when you increase or you change the omega. Changing the omega in this diagram is this straight line here, because A is S0 divided by 2S1 is the same as here it's omega equals 0, and here you increase omega. And you see when increasing omega, sometimes here you have an imaginary Floquet exponent. That means here it's I gamma. Those are acceptable solutions because it means you have harmonic space waves that can eventually fulfill periodic boundary condition. But here the Floquet exponent is purely real, positive and negative, and you don't want solution with positive exponent, because those waves, they can explode, and if you treat that with boundary condition, periodic boundary condition, you will not be able to fulfill boundary condition. Or sometimes what people say also is that this is a passive system and the wave can't gain energy. So this is in fact a stop band. It's not possible. And it's an alternance between stop band and passing band, acceptable solution, and not acceptable solution for space. What people do now is that when you look at the dispersion relation omega as a function of gamma, here you have gamma inside, what you get is some diagram like this. You get omega as a function of gamma is the dispersion relation, but sometimes it's passing, and something you have stopping bound, passing and stopping bound. People, they usually show this in what's called the first Brillouin zone, that is here between 1 and -1. It means this is symmetrical because of some periodicity relation, and you have to fold that back here, and that's where you get your classical dispersion relation. So the idea is a wave in a space periodic media. It means that sometimes the wave is passing, sometimes not. Only certain frequency and wave number are acceptable. So based on this theory, more evolved, because Floquet theory, it's for system in 1D. At the beginning, it was only for time. When you have periodicity in time, it was 1D. So in very particular problem that I showed you in 1D in space, you can do Floquet. But if you want to go 2D with crystal or with something else, or 3D, like Nick is doing, you need to go with something called Floquet block theory. So you have famous example of crystal. One that I like is the acoustic crystal that is done in physics. People have put several Coca cans in a crystal fashion. They are with loudspeaker. They are putting waves on it. They're doing experiment. They're also doing simulation. And you see here it's the dispersion relation, frequency as a function of wave number, and you find stop bands, and it's 2D thanks to the block theory. That's for waves in periodic media, but people, and Nick was one of the first to introduce that in the stability of periodic structures. You can also use block-Floquet theory for stability of periodic structure. That's one of some images from the last paper of Nick with Christelle Combescure, where they are studying the stability of periodic arrays of this system when you have a load applying on it. The way you do this, you work on a unit cell with block periodic conditions. You write a linearized problem like a tangent matrix depending of lambda, the loading path, also the wave numbers of the possible instability eigenmodes. It's in 2D, so K1, K2. Okay, and you can write and you can compute. It's an eigenvalue problem of the spectrum of this stiffness tangent, and you look at the evolution of this spectrum when lambda, K1, and K2 are moving, and you can tell when, for what lambda the system becomes unstable, and you can say on what mode, periodic mode, the system is bifurcating. Okay, that's another system. So, and I'm working a little bit on this context. That was for the context. So the thing I want to talk to you today is about first one time periodic system, and second another space periodic system. So the time periodic system experiment that I'm doing, I've been inspired, in fact, by a talk I have seen at MIT when I arrived. It was in 2010, and it's a famous experiment in fluid from Yves Couder. That is not here anymore, sadly. I think passed away. It was 2 years ago now. But he made a famous experiment. It's called the bouncing droplet experiment, and it's a nice experiment. It's a particle wave interaction experiment at the macroscopic scale. You can see it in the lab. The idea is that it's quite easy with certain parameters. So the idea is it's the same setup as the Faraday instability. So that's why I like it for the first time. It's the Faraday instability, but you just go below the Faraday threshold. So you see nothing at the surface. You put a little droplet on it, and it turns out that for some parameter, the droplet bounces indefinitely on the frontier, and you get a nice wave-particle interaction. Okay. The wave, every time it touches, it excites a Faraday wave, so the droplet generates a wave. But the nice thing is that sometimes, for some parameter, this droplet, I would say it's stable. It's horizontally stable. But sometimes, turns out that this fluid is inside a recipient. You have also reflection. The waves come back. And sometimes the droplet is not anymore horizontally stable. And in the lab, they say that the droplet is walking. So it's so very impressive to see. The droplet is no more stable. It's horizontally unstable, and it starts to walk. And here you're going very difficult nonlinear phenomena, but it's a beautiful experiment. When you put another droplet, in fact, the droplet can dance together. They can make crystal. They've done many, many experiments about this. Okay, and they've been so far that they realize that this complex system that has Kao in it, that is highly nonlinear, it's very complex, but inside it seems that it's sometimes you have simple discrete rules that describe this spatial wave-particle interaction. Like they put some ferromagnetic fluid inside, and they apply some harmonic potential to that droplet. It's a very complicated experiment. And they find that, in fact, the droplet were doing very crazy motion. But when you look at the spectrum, for example, the radius of this motion and the angular momentum was kind of discrete. You have discrete modes inside this problem. And that's why some people call that a quantum analogy. macroscopic quantum analogy. That's a dangerous way to go. Some people like it or not, but let's keep on that experiment. And this next experiment is just beautiful by the way it is. And I was quite intrigued by that because I have the feeling that this, for example, the stability of this system is a prime of time periodic systems. So some people for example, 2 years ago, they want to understand why is this particle stable, horizontally stable or not. And they've done a dynamical system. How do you call that? It's what they solve, I think, is a discrete dynamical system. Every time the particle bounces. So the idea is that it's a numerical simulation, and they are looking at you have here a rigid surface that is a sinusoidal surface. The surface has a vertical harmonic motion, and this particle here in red can bounce on this surface here. And what they do, they solve a discrete time periodic system. So sometimes, I can play their movie. It was in Chaos 2 years ago. So you put a small perturbation, and sometimes every period, in fact, the particle is not gaining any energy, and slowly she's coming back to the center here, to the lower, let's say, not potential, but the well here of the structure. Okay, but you have some other parameters. I can play the movie again, where you put a small perturbation, and in fact, here it's already in a limit cycle. But in fact, this particle will gain some energy. Here it's already in the limit cycle, but it will gain some energy, and it will start to be horizontally unstable, and it will start to walk, as they say. Okay. So this is an example of a simpler particle wave model. It was, I think it was in 1999, still Yves Couder with Al-Reski Boudaoud and Martin Benamar. They were studying another particle interaction. It was closer to us because it was here an elastic string in interaction with a bead with a certain mass that was not negligible as respect to the string. Okay. What they were doing in that experiment, they were controlling let's say, the tension in the string that was constant. And with some magnetic force, they were applying a classic periodic excitation to that string that was vibrating very fast. The bead was kind of a small annulus, and it turns out that sometimes that bead was moving very slowly to stop at a certain equilibrium position, okay, after a certain time. So Al-Reski did a model of this, a coupling model. He coupled, it was a model of the vertical position oscillation of the string by taking into account the mass of the bead. It's called the Helmholtz string. And it took into account also the kinetic energy, the conservation of kinetic energy of the bead in the vertical and the horizontal position. And when you couple this, you found out that in fact, it's as if when you're looking for stationary solution, as if the bead was in a periodic potential, a long-range periodic potential. And because in a periodic potential, but because the motion of the string was very fast and the motion of the bead, the displacement of the bead was very slow, he could solve this problem as if it was an averaging method. He was only slowing the slow time of the bead, and he found it was equivalent to find the equilibrium position of a bead inside a nonlinear potential. Nonlinear potential that was depending on the excitation frequency. That's in black line, it's this theory. And you look at how good the experiments are. The experiments consist in, let's say, you are at that frequency omega 0. The string is vibrating. You put the bead at a given position, and slowly the bead goes to either that side of the string, let's say it's on the left, or on that side. Okay. So when I see all these problems, I see synchronization. I think something that is not done, and I thought I could contribute into. It's about stability. Let's say how to do the dynamical stability of a particle that is interacting with a wave or with a periodic field. you see that you have synchronization. It seems that you have modes or things like that. So I started with Suzy Protier and Alvaro Anzolio Galgrandi, that is a PhD student that is working with us. He's starting his second year now. We started by doing a small experiment that is the following. It's a pendulum. So the idea is to have a pendulum. So this system has its own natural frequency. He has his own natural time scale. The same as when you have a particle that has a flying time, it has its own natural time scale. The natural time scale is simply the natural frequency of a pendulum that is only oscillating in that direction. This pendulum is put the most symmetrically as you can, it's experiment, between two electromagnets. The two electromagnets, when you put electrical current in it, they both attract the little bead on the right for this one and on the left for this one. They are exactly the same magnets and you put exactly the same electrical current. Okay. And the experiment we want to do to study, let's say, interaction between a particle and a periodic field is that periodically we will turn on and off and on and off those magnets. So when it's off, the particle is free to move, and when it's on, it's interacting with the field. And the question we ask is, when is the particle stable in the middle, and when is it not stable? Okay. So the very basic way to see this problem, when you think about a model, a very first simple model, is something about, again, time periodic system, because when the magnets are off, the particle is the same as a mass in the harmonic potential. Okay, and when they are on, you completely change the energy landscape, the potential energy landscape, but you change locally you change the curvature of the potential, and for large theta, you also create, for example, new equilibrium points. Okay, if I turn that electromagnets on, if I have the potential in red here, and if it's static, I let them on for forever. I can let the pendulum here here it's stable. But if I put too large of theta, so if it's too close to the magnets, they will stick in there or stick in there. It's completely symmetric. It's important to keep it that way. Okay. Our first approach to this deceivingly simple system is to have a linear approach. Okay, we'll just look at the local stability of this pendulum here. But in fact, you can do with this simple system, you can have multiple solutions that are represented here, A, B, C, and D. It's a local vision of the potential around the mass. Okay. Imagine if the magnets are turned on most of the time and strongly on. In fact, the particle can be unstable. And if you turn them, you turn them on. This problem is when you turn them on very strongly, but on not so strongly, and it means the particle will periodically change between two unstable systems. Here, it's not something we will study because the particle will be unstable. But you have systems where the electromagnets, they are on, so will be in a situation where the pendulum is not stable, but you turn them off sometimes, periodically. So for a short period of time, they will be stable. And what we can ask is this particle stable? And etc., etc. If you want to do a simple model associated with this simple energy vision, in fact, you go back to time periodic systems again. Because the system we are trying to solve, we have the mass as a kinetic energy, and it has a potential energy that periodically varies with time. So if you do, for example, if you derive the Lagrange equation, the equation of motion through the Lagrange equation, what you gain is something called the Hill equation. Mathieu equation is when the periodic coefficient is a cosine, otherwise it's a Hill equation. It's a differential equation with a periodic coefficient. And the way you solve it with flow case theory, and you find here we take again the Mathieu case, and you get again the Mathieu tongues. So, but is it really exactly the same as all the system I've showed you before? What we've done is that, in fact, when you take classical systems, you take the Faraday instability, you take the Botafumeiro, so the parametric pendulum, or you take other systems that you find in mechanical engineering. You can take this system, all put them in a form of this following equation of motion, and you put those points, those experimental points, you put them in the stability diagram. And you find, in fact, that all the systems, they are very, very close to the tip of the instability tongues. The modulation that you have is really just a small perturbation. Okay? So in fact, all the rest of the stability diagram is not studied. And so maybe interesting phenomena can be hidden in there. That's why I call that talk go beyond the tips of the tongues, okay, with this simple system. So let's characterize this system, okay? Here you have the two magnets, and here you have this little particle. If you put zero electrical current in it, this system has its own natural frequency. The movies are not playing well. I don't know if you see them or not, but maybe it's my internet connection. If you increase the electrical current inside those two electromagnets, below a certain something we call the critical current, you still have the nature of the natural motion is still an oscillation, but it's much slower. Okay, and if you put even more electrical current, at one point, it's not an oscillating system that you have. The evolution function is not the one of an oscillating system. It's a diverging system. You go on the right or on the left, depending on your imperfection. Those were like first experiments. So you see, you have a lot of imperfection. The one we have now is a bit better. What you need is that when you increase the current, you want your particle to be at the best in the middle of those two electromagnets. Okay. And if you look at the evolution of this natural time scale as a function of this control parameter that is the electrical current, you see that here it's the natural frequency of the pendulum, and you can go down, 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 and until this natural frequency goes to zero. And in fact, you don't have an oscillating system, you have a diverging one. So this system, if now what we will do by turning on and off periodically the magnets, we will be able to switch between naturally oscillating state, diverging state, etc. So it means we will be able to discover the whole stability diagram of the system. So that's what we've done with Alvaro for his first year PhD student. We have periodically modulate the electrical current in the system. It means what we've done, sometimes when it was off, the pendulum was vibrating at its own natural pulsation. And when it was on, depending if it's strong or not, we was decreasing this natural pulsation, this natural frequency. Okay. So here you have an example, first example, for a large electrical current and a period that is the same, close to the natural period of the system. The green light here is it's on, and when it will not be here, it will be off. It will be fast for the first one. Sometimes we find you'll see, so off, on, and it's very fast. The mass doesn't want to stay in the middle. See? And the way it destabilizes, it's in a dynamical way. In fact, that's the beginning of the motion we will see it's a parametric instability. But sometimes you can use one order of magnitude higher period, and you still find parametric instabilities. We'll see here, it's 10 seconds. So it's on, very long, off. Off, it's the natural pulsation. It will be on again. So it's the pulsation is quite slower, and off. On and off. And what you get is a parametric pumping. You'll get some gain, and you will become unstable. And you will diverge on a limit cycle. You see the movies, or it's like me, you don't see them? Ah, okay. Well,
I see them.
I see them very slow. The second one was a 2T periodic cycle. It's the period of the limit cycle is twice the period of the excitation frequency. This one was a periodic cycle. And in fact, the difference with classic parametric instabilities when you do them in mechanical engineering, let's say you take a parametric pendulum where you change the length of the pendulum. You can, with this kind of system, you can do it's called the primary instability region. It's easy to do, but already the second is difficult to see, and the third, it's almost impossible. But with this kind of system, it's as easy to keep the mass in the middle or to have parametric instabilities. You have 100, 500 type of instabilities in that system. It's really enhanced. So, for example, that's 4 kinds of instability that we experimentally showed. This first one is the classic Faraday instability. If we were on the looking at the way the system destabilizes, you have a small imperfection because of periodicity. You get a parametric pumping, positive pumping. You have a gain, and you go to a limit cycle. This limit cycle, for example, it's the 2T periodic cycle because you need to do twice period of the excitation to go back and the response for the response to have its periodicity. Okay, but that's another mode. You see, that's the mode we've seen in the movie on the left. It's the second instability region. But you can go to very high instability region. Here, when we waited 10 seconds, the pendulum has the time to do a lot of oscillation before going to an instability. Okay, so what's really going on if we want to understand things? We've done a simple model. I forgot to say that with this simple model, yet maybe you've seen that the way we treated the magnetic field, it's not with a rigorous model for the moment. It's a fitting. We know the magnetic field has an influence of the natural periodicity of the system, but the model we see it's a model with varying natural periodicity. We are not taking into account the electromagnetism, things like that. We'll see if we do that in the following. Okay. So our simple model is the following. This pendulum is simply in 2 states over 1 period. Sometimes this pendulum has a natural pulsation omega 0, and sometimes omega I. So the simple linear equation of motion of this mass, it's simply theta 2 dot plus omega 0 square theta, or theta 2 dot plus omega I square theta. This can be gathered in one single equation, this being sine of sine omega t, plus 1 if this is positive, minus 1 if this is negative. And this is exactly the same as this system. Okay? Instead of playing with real time and natural frequencies, things like that, you can make everything dimensionless. It's always the same kind of things, a dimensionless time, and then a dimensionless parameter that represents the ratio between the natural time scales of the pendulum and the excitation frequency, parametric excitation. And here it's another parameter like this. And if you do so, it's with flow case theory, it's easy to solve. It's a 1D dimensional system. This solution is a periodic solution times harmonic solution, and you can find for any alpha and beta, you can find the evolution of this Floquet exponent. If real part is superior to 0, that's those tongues in red, the system is dynamically unstable. It's a little bit different from Mathieu's tongues, because here we don't have a Mathieu equation. We have something called the Meissner equation. It was very used in electrical engineering sometimes. The difference with Mathieu's tongues, they all originate at the same when beta square equals to 0, but you see those pockets, those instability pockets. Many of them. You can continue very far, and you always see those pockets. First instability region has no pocket, and 2, 3, 4, etc., etc. what we will do is we want to understand where those pockets come from. Okay. The nice thing with Messner equation, I didn't say it, that is an advantage as compared to Mathieu equation, is that it's really easy to solve it analytically. This is not numerical, it's analytical. You have an explicit solution for the S, the Floquet exponent. But it doesn't mean because you have an analytical expression doesn't mean you understand the physics behind it. So that's what we want to do. In fact, why this particle or this mass is dynamically unstable and sometimes not. I think the way you get parametric pumping is the following. To get destabilized, to get energy, what you need is when the pendulum is at the bottom, that is the potential energy is minimal and kinetic energy is maximal, okay? You're at the bottom, what you need to do is to turn the magnets on, because it's as if the effective gravity was smaller, as if the mass was lighter, okay? So when you're at the bottom, you turn them on so that it's lighter and it's easy to go up. And to get a lot of gain, you need to turn off the magnet again. That means to put back strong energy just before you're going to go back, so that you go back with the fastest, if you want. And you continue. If you come back down and you turn them on again, it's light, so it's easy to go up. And you turn them off when you're at the top. They are you go back to classic gravity again, and it's accelerated. They go fast to the middle, and that's how you can parametrically gain some energy. That's how you do. But the way of events I described you, that was the primary instability. It means turning on when you're at the bottom, 1/4 of period after you turn them off, 1/4 after on, etc., etc. But what you can do, in fact, is that you can turn on when you're at the bottom, wait, and turn them off when you're at that side. And you wait, etc., etc. And that's why you get, in fact, many modes. So how you write that mathematically? What I say in there, it's here, in fact. You want every quarter of a natural period. Let's say you are in the blue region. Every quarter of the natural period, you want to fit that exactly in half this is the blue time here is half of the excitation period. And for the red, it's the same. You want to fit exactly a finite number of quarter of a natural period inside the half of the excitation period. This is with dimension, and if you transform that in your dimensionless parameters, you find a relation between alpha square and beta square, and those numbers m and n that in fact are now discrete modes. Okay, 2m minus 1 is the number of quarters of natural period you can fit inside half of period. This in fact gives you a discrete set of rules, and you can find you can count that in fact in your experimental response. That was the movie I played I don't know, a few minutes ago. In this blue region, you can count the number of quarter of periods. You find 49, and here you find 23. It means in the MN space, this was a 25-12 mode instability, parametric instability region. So let's see what it gives in the instability diagram. I plot here the extended, very extended parametric instability diagram, the one that I plotted analytically. And you see now that as compared to the classic stability diagram of the Mathieu equation, the Mathieu-Tonks that we've seen, every time that I showed you before, they were, let's say, in this little zoom here at the very beginning. But what we are treating now with those kind of system, mass interacting with periodic media, a periodic field, we see that now we are looking at stability diagram that are like 2 orders of magnitudes larger than what I was doing before. So what I'll do, I will superimpose on that curve the discrete set of rules that I find with the m and the n, and the relation with the alpha and beta, and that's the gray point. You see, in fact, that's the simple explanation. All those parametric instability pockets, they can be explained with these simple rules with number of quarters of a period that you can fit in this system. And you see that we've made many experimental points. I just show you 4, but you can find them really. You have a very good agreement with what you were expecting and what you find in the lab. And again, that's how you see why we were finding it was, let's say, 50. It was as easy to find the particle in the middle or the particle to go on the magnets, because the number of instability region is in fact huge. Okay. So we were so that's for the moment, that's the thing we were interested in, and the idea now is to go back to the wave particle interaction, and we are working on that right now. So the 2 things we've done, and I think it's interesting before with this kind of system, is it's an idea of optimization. With this kind of system, you can have an idea of optimal particle wave interactions, because the thing I've showed you before, we were turning off and on the magnets the same amount of time, but nothing. You are not limited to that, and you can ask you one question: what happens when the moment you turn on the magnet is very, very, very small? If you turn them on with 0 seconds, it's the classic case. It's a simple pendulum. But when you turn them with 1 microsecond, it's kind of it's close to a pendulum that is always classical, but every period you have a very almost a direct comb of turning them on. You see, you find in that case that the stability diagram is almost lines and not anymore tongues. The tongues are almost lines that are simply lines that correspond to parametric excitation equals 3 or 3.5 or 4.5 times the natural pulsation. What's interesting is that we've done a direct comb with our experiment. So you see now the green point is really just a flash. You see, and also we're turning them on very. It's quite efficient energetically. We don't turn them on a lot. You see that you're able to trigger a parametric instability. And the limit cycle you get, that's also interesting, is very close to the natural oscillation, the classical oscillation of the pendulum. When you look at the limit cycle, in fact, it's the natural oscillation of the pendulum that is just reset every 3t0, but you can do every 6t0 it's just reset to have again this natural oscillation. So this what seems quite simple here. We are working with people from the LAS in Toulouse, that is the lab fabricating microelectromechanical systems, because I think it could be a good alternative to trigger oscillations, ultra high frequencies oscillation in MEMS, because now they use resonance, and what I showed you here is not a resonance, the parametric instability. And you have differences that we can use for that would be interesting. So we are starting to collaborate now. Another problem, but tell me, Stella, how long should I speak?
So you can do 5 minutes or more, because I will start
five
at
minutes
11,
more? Yeah.
something like that. But
yeah.
No pressure. Thanks.
It's perfect. So there is another optimal or minimizing things that I really want to study now, but I think I will pass on that one, because Nick being listening, I want to go back to the second subject. The second subject is a project that was doing, let's say, on the side, but it's still about periodic system, but here it's space periodic system. And I wanted to see, is there a kind of an analogy to the Mathieu oscillator in space for the stability of structures? Okay. And first, what I've took was a simple, it's called the Winkler. It's a fundamental system, academic system. It's a Winkler, it's a beam on a Winkler foundation. So it's an infinite beam that you compressed. You have a Young modulus, you have second moment of area, and this beam is lying on an elastic foundation. It's a famous problem. When the elastic foundation is constant in space, in fact, what you get is a microscopic instability for a certain critical compressive load. And there is a wrinkling mode or buckling mode that appears with a natural wavelength, lambda n, that depends on the ratio between the springs of the foundation and the EI of the beam. But the question I'm asking myself is, what happens now if the springs are periodic? Okay. Normally, the buckling mode has a natural wavelength that depends on k. What happens when you modulate k in space? So now k is modulating k. You have an amplitude of modulation, the change of the stiffness of the spring, and you also have it's not an excitation, a wavelength lambda, it's the wavelength of the spring. And you're asking yourself, what is the mode, or what is the buckling mode of the system? It's again, I'm doing this because it's again a Floquet problem, where you can express your perturbation as yx is a periodic function times a harmonic function, where s is the Floquet exponent, and it will represent the wave number of your buckling mode, and A is periodic, where lambda is the period of modulation. When you solve this system, it's a 1D system, so you can use Floquet theory. No need for block wave theory with block condition. We are not in 2D in there. And for example, as a function of loading lambda, you can look at the evolution of the Floquet exponent. The real part is kind of a growth rate. We are in the space problem, so it's not really growth rate, but it's the real part of S. And the imaginary part represents your fundamental wave number, the block wave number, actually. How do you find the critical load? The critical load is the first time you increase the compressive load. It's the first time when your Floquet exponent is purely imaginary, because it's the only acceptable solution for an infinite beam or for a beam that has periodic condition. And that's your critical load. And you can read here, exactly at that same point, what is the wave number spectrum of your mode. Sometimes it's quasi-periodic. Sometimes it will be, we'll see, periodic or lambda, 2 lambda periodic. This is the first Brillouin zone here. I already talked about that. The second, the third. With block wave, with a Floquet block analysis, you work, it's a little bit different, but you work in the Brillouin zone. With the Floquet theory I'm using, you just follow the fundamental wave number, but it's a little bit the same. Okay. What you can do now is to look at the pattern wave number that you will obtain, the buckling mode, as a function of modulation wavelengths that you put in your springs. And you will find, in fact, that you alternate between quasi-periodic buckling mode, periodic, 2 lambda periodic, etc. And when you represent this fundamental wave number, or those block wave number in the modulation parameter space, that is the wavelengths of the springs and the amplitude of the springs, you find something that is quite analog to the Mathieu tongues. Also, you are not interpreting it the same because you have a boundary value problem and not an initial value problem. Okay. So I will finish with, I've done a small application of this, more physical application than the Winkler foundation. Is imagine you have an elastic wall with a height h, a thickness t, a length l, and this elastic wall is glued on something that is soft below. So that when you compress the soft here bottom here, you cannot buckle globally as a beam would do, because the bottom is constrained at least in the longitudinal sense. And what you obtain is this wall with buckle out of plane with a certain natural wavelength, lambda 0, for a certain critical load. Because I didn't have Floquet block numerical tools for solving this problem, I'm working a bit with Christelle Combescu on that, but for the moment we haven't been too far on that. I was using classic finite element. I was taking a long beam and I was doing my problem. So I have a long beam with some, it's a shell with some shell elements. I'm constraining the bottom of that beam longitudinally to do the same. And I'm looking at the buckling mode of that system. And you see, I find again that what I have is a buckling mode with a certain natural wavelength. You can do this for several heights of the wall, several lengths, several things, and you find that the critical wavelength lambda 0 is proportional to the height of the wall. And the question you can ask now, if it's proportional to the height of the wall, what happens if you modulate that height in space? And it's again a Floquet problem that I will show you here of numerical results. Above, it's the geometry that I'm looking at. I will modulate, I will keep the amplitude of modulation the same of the height, but I will change the wavelength of modulation of the height. And below is the first buckling mode. So that's the first one. It's not really periodic. Up a little bit smaller of a wavelength, that's the buckling mode. A little bit smaller of a wavelength, that's the buckling mode. And I will play a movie. So again, and you will see sometimes you have quasi-periodic mode, but sometimes you'll see lock-in, wave number lock-in. That's the first lock-in. That's a lambda mode. Unlocking, quasi-periodic modes, buckling modes. And you will see it will come up another wave number locking. And here, what you have in this region is a 2 lambda buckling mode. And you continue to change the wavelengths, and again, a quasi-periodic mode. If you look at the frequency spectrum of this buckling mode as a function of the modulation wavelengths, you get something like this. It's again the same thing as those wave number locking that you always get in Floquet series. Sometimes you get here quasi-periodic wrinkling patterns, sometimes 2 lambda periodic, and sometimes lambda periodic patterns. And if you plot that in its finite element simulation, in the amplitude modulation wavelengths ratio, that's the fundamental wave number. You see how these periodic modes and quasi-periodic modes. So I'll let you with this. I'll conclude. So I'll show you that I think there's still something to learn about time periodic systems, especially when modulation is finite or large. And I think those problems, they can give us some insight in the stability of particle wave interaction, because you see synchronization, and I haven't time to show you that, but there's a question also about optimal energy transfer between the periodic media and the particle. And I show you an analog of Mathieu oscillator to the stability of periodic structures. Maybe it's, I see that as a possibility to enrich wrinkling patterns. So just a few things about perspective. We started to go truly in particle elastic wave interactions to see what we can say on those structures with Anaïs Abramian, that is a postdoc with me and Suzy Protier. It's in progress. We are continuing with, it's also some thanks to all those students. We are continuing the thesis of Anzoleo Gargrandi about particles in periodically varying potentials. Now going a little bit to coupling, particle coupling. So he's doing experiments on that. And with Victor Romero, that is also a postdoc working with me, we are starting to make proof of concept of what I showed you on this buckling, microscopic buckling of this elastic wall. What's going on when you periodically modulate the height of those walls. We use a laser cutter, silicones, and here you can see the first results, enriching the wrinkling with 2 lambda periodic patterns, and higher quasi-periodic patterns. And thank you for your attention.